So, if you subscribe to the Moog newsletter, you will know that they are about to discontinue the Grandmother and Matriarch Dark Edition synthesizers. Now, this raised a couple of questions in my mind which I would like to discuss with you. Yes, this is an interactive video channel. Principally, how important are aesthetics or looks in the gear that you use? I would also like to talk a little bit about price, and possibly towards the end of the video we might have a little bit speculation. Now, if you've seen some of my other videos, you will probably know that I have a Moog Grandmother Dark, which you might be able to see over my shoulder in the corner there. Now, I bought this at the back end of 2020, mainly to accompany my modular system, which you can also possibly see a little bit of in the corner there. I wanted a keyboard so I could play the thing, and I thought it would be a good idea to get a semi-modular synth so I could also use it to interface with the modular system. So I did a lot of research and I decided that the Grandmother was the synth for me. However, I could not bring myself to pull the trigger on something that looked like Sooty's xylophone. Now, you probably have to be British and of a certain generation to get that reference, but for the rest of you, I could not bring myself to buy a synthesizer which looked like Mickey Mouse's paint box. Now, this was obviously a very personal opinion and a personal preference, and let me just say for the record that I have absolutely no problem with anyone who loves the pastel coloured original synthesizers. It is, as I say, down to personal preference, so I don't have a problem with that. The music business and the music industry and we musicians are big enough to accept all tastes. So I hummed and hawed over whether or not to buy one when, lo and behold, Moog announced the Dark version. So I ran my local friendly music store and they said, we have a shipment due in a few weeks, you can have one of those if you like. So this ticked all the boxes. Now, at the time, I could buy an original Moog Grandmother for 789 Great British pounds. Now, for comparison, that is roughly the equivalent of $1,070. However, my local friendly music store said the Dark Edition will cost you £949. This was £160 more than the original, and again for comparison this is around $220. Now, let's just be absolutely clear here, the original and the Dark Editions are functionally exactly the same. There is no difference at all apart from the colour. So you might think this was a bit mad paying £160 more just to get a black one. But the thing is, I had never had a Moog synth before, and I really like Moog and I really like the brand. But to me, a Moog synthesizer is a big black shiny object. That to me says Moog. It says this is a serious piece of kit. It says this is a professional piece of equipment and not, well, so I was obviously prepared to pay over the odds to get a black edition rather than the original pastel coloured one. Now, this was at the back end of 2020, and during my travels through the internet over the last year, I have occasionally bumped into Grandmothers and their prices, and they seem to have been sticking at around £789 for the original one. The price of the Dark Editions has come down a little bit, with only perhaps say around about a £70 or £80 premium over the last 12 months rather than the £160 which I paid. Now, this raised a question in my mind. Does it actually cost more to produce a Dark Edition than the pastel coloured edition? Now, I am absolutely no expert on synthesizer manufacturing or manufacturing in general, but I would have thought it would cost less to produce something which is the same colour all over rather than something which had panels of different colours stuck on it. So why does the Dark Edition cost more than the original? I'm pretty sure it can't be a manufacturing cost, although I am happy to be proved wrong if someone wants to leave a comment down below. So my thought is that either Moog is charging the retailers more for a black edition, or the retailers are just simply not discounting the black edition as much as they are discounting the original. And again, why should that be the case? And the only thing I can think of is that, well, it's a bit special. It's a special edition. Now, when it was launched, I don't think Moog said this was going to be a limited edition. I could be wrong there, but it's been running for over a year, so it was hardly limited in the sense that some pieces of gear, which we won't get into, were a limited edition. So I think it was just a special edition. But because the original pastel-coloured synths proved so divisive, and they were, if you checked some forums, you would see that they really divided opinion. So my thought about this is that Moog was obviously aware that there were so many people who really just did not like the pastel colours. They wanted a Moog that looked like a Moog. So they took this to heart and took it on board, and they produced a proper dark-coloured Moog synthesizer. So I feel totally vindicated by the fact that they saw that people did want a Moog-coloured Moog synth. But to charge more for it, whether that's down to Moog or to the retailers, I'm not so sure about that. However, since the announcement of the discontinuation of the Dark editions, now I'm making this video only a couple of days after the announcement, but I checked the prices of the Grandmother on the web, and in the UK you can now buy a Grandmother for £755. That's around $1,020. And what's quite interesting is that some retailers are actually offering the original and the Dark edition for the same price, for $755. So I just thought that was interesting. Now, whether or not the prices will change as the supply, I assume, of the Dark editions gets more scarce remains to be seen. But all of this comes together to ask the main question, and the main purpose of this video is, do appearances make a difference? Again, bearing in mind that the two products are otherwise absolutely functionally identical. Now, obviously, to me, they did make a difference. To some people I know, they will not make a difference at all. They would probably prefer to save the additional £160 which I paid and possibly buy a Behringer synth with that, or just save the money and have a good night out. But how important is the look of the gear that you use? Does it make a difference to the way you use it, to how often you use it? Does it inspire you if it looks a certain way? Now, I was trying to think of an analogy outside the music realm, and I came up with two which you may be able to identify with or not. If you buy a new car, you can usually choose the colour. And some people obviously have a serious preference about the colour of their car. Now, for those of us who can't afford new cars, the other analogy I thought of was t-shirts and sweatshirts. Now, some of these have logos on, some don't, but they all have a particular colour, and when you go into the shop to buy one of these, you buy one which appeals to you. So if you buy a nice shirt, whether it's got a logo on it or not, you are more likely to wear it and get enjoyment from it than if your grandmother, so to speak, buys you a t-shirt or a sweatshirt in a colour which you absolutely hate. So I think appearances in many facets of our lives do make a significant difference. But I would like to know what you think, and particularly what you think about looks and appearances in musical equipment. How important is it to you? Now, the other question which popped into my mind when I read the newsletter was, why discontinue the Dark edition? Now, there was nothing divisive about the Dark edition. If Moog had originally come out with the Grandmother and the Matriarch in the Dark edition, I don't think there would have been any controversy about them at all. Now, as the Dark edition is available and generally at the same or a very similar price to the original, why would Moog discontinue a synthesizer which looks like a Moog and which I think most people would be very happy to own? Now, the only reason I can think of is that they want to add a little impetus to the sales to give people a little bit of push if they have been sitting on the fence about whether to buy a Grandmother or not. If you have a different theory, then please leave that in the comments as well. Now, the newsletter was very specific. It is discontinuing the Dark editions. It did not say it was discontinuing the Grandmother of the Matriarch. Now, the Grandmother was released in 2018. I think the Matriarch followed a few months or maybe even a year later. So they are not new in their life cycle, but neither are they old. So I would have thought there's still a good few years of life left in them. But who knows what's going on in Moog HQ. It's fun to speculate. Please do let me know your thoughts. My own are, I absolutely love the Grandmother. I have absolutely no intention of parting with it. I would be happy to add another suitable Moog synth to my collection as long as it looked like a Moog synth and not like, you know. So thank you for watching so far. If you have enjoyed this video in any way, shape or form, you might want to check out some of the other videos on the channel. I talk about synthesizers, there are some tutorials, there are pieces of electronic music. If you are into this sort of thing, you might want to consider subscribing and ringing the bell. Thank you, so you get informed of new videos whenever I release them, and hit the big thumb because that really does help as well. As always, I really do want to thank you for watching my videos. I really do appreciate you taking the time to do so, and I will be back again with another video very soon.